Everybody, Mike Griffith here along with Chip Towers. We're live at Sanford Stadium. We're doing our post-game wrap on G-Day, Chip. And I don't know, do you got your phone on you, I wonder here? I was going to look at some. During this production, we're going to look at some of your comments and take your questions. If you've got questions about G-Day, Chip and I were in the post-game with Kirby Smart, as well as a lot of other players we had a chance to talk to. Jake Fromm, J.J. Holloman, Brian Herrion, DeAndre Swift. So when you have questions, write them down in the comments section, and we'll do our best to answer your questions from what I thought was a really exciting game. I know that scrimmages, Chip, you know, an inter-squad scrimmage, nobody really wins, nobody loses, or maybe you could look at it, they both win. But for a lot of fans, you get an opportunity to see a lot of the young players step up and guys start to emerge, because we've been waiting to see who is going to replace all these great players that are going on to the NFL for Georgia. And today we got some of those questions answered. And I guess I'm going to start there. I'm going to do this a little different. Chip, who was your player of the game today?
I would say maybe Matt Landers. You know, and the reason I'll say that, not really because of what that he did in total in the game. For me, it was the most revealing person that I saw. But for two reasons. One, I mean, obviously he throws the touchdown pass to Dwan Mathis, which was probably the most exciting highlight of the day. And then secondly, he was targeted a lot. So he didn't make two of the catches Kirby talked about. He should have made them. You and I were watching the game and thinking, yeah, he probably should have made one of those catches. But the fact of the matter, they targeted him three different times deep. He caught one of them. He had I forget how long it was, but a 39 or so yard catch. So I'm going to go with Matt Landers, you know, without having thought about that ahead of time. I was sort of winging it a little bit, but you know, I probably learned more about Matt Landers and really what Georgia thinks about Matt Landers today.
Yeah, he did. He had a 52-yard grab. He had a couple of drops. He was actually in my stock down. Because those drops, you can't do that. You're not going to play. But later on, he made that great catch. And as you said, the fact that the Georgia coaches kept going to him, they believe in him. They want that big target. You see that he gets the separation. Yeah. That's the big thing. He can beat press coverage and get open. Now he's got to work this summer. So I can see why you would go that way. I went with Brian Herrion. And let me tell you why. I knew that Brian was a workhorse going into this fall. Going into this spring. I knew that when he had his opportunities, he was going to go hard. He was the best short yardage runner. But today, when he caught that pass and put that stiff arm on J.R. Reed, J.R. Reed is an NFL safety right now, okay? If J.R. Reed was in the NFL draft, he would go in the first 3 rounds. So to see Brian in the open field knock down J.R. Reed with a stiff arm, that impressed me, Chip. So Herrion is more than just a workhorse, I think. I think Brian Herrion's going to have more than 1,000 total yards. You and I are both in agreement that Zamir White is not going to pass him on the depth chart in fall drills merely because of Brian's experience and the fact that George's going to be very careful bringing Zamir on. And if you look at the schedule, there's no real reason for Zamir White to have to be there ready to answer the bell in September. Now, as the season goes on, as we talk about a championship, obviously young players are going to emerge. But the fact that Zamir hasn't played a college game means that Brian Herrion is going to have to carry a big load between the tackles. But what I saw today, him catching the football and taking, and sorry, JR, if you're watching, but watching him wipe out J.R. Reed in the open field was very revealing because I didn't know that Brian could do that. So that was my emerging player. Now, if there was an area that was slightly disappointing, albeit you all saw the weather, and we know that a lot of the Georgia offense, Chip, wasn't out there on the table. Jake Fromm beat himself up pretty good. Jake was not happy with his performance today.
Yeah, I mean, and he didn't play great, you know, and it kind of started there from the very beginning. Obviously, Eric Stokes, the pick six.
How much is on him versus Holloman, though, on that?
Holloman slipped and fell, you know, okay. and I actually, in the heat of the action, I actually didn't catch that part that JJ had slipped earlier in the play, and it ends up being a 50-50 ball instead of probably what have been, I mean, you know, that's a split-second decision that, the ball's already coming out of Jake's hand on a quick slant over there. It was the right read. It's just that JJ slipped, which made what should have been an open play, a 50-50 ball, and Eric Stokes did a good job of getting in there and creating havoc, right? I mean, that's all we heard about the entire spring was havoc plays. Georgia's defense created a havoc play within the first 2 minutes of the game, so that was encouraging. It's like all these spring games, something bad happens, it's bad on one side, but it's encouraging on the other side. Eric Stokes made a play.
By the way, Chip just posted a story on Eric Stokes on Dog Nation. You need to check it out. I think he was probably the defensive MVP.
He was probably the defensive MVP. Now, he's like any other cornerback. He gave up, so late in the game, he gives up a touchdown to J.J. Holloman on the post. And J.J., you got to understand the dynamics of Eric Stokes and J.J. Holloman. They are from almost the same neighborhood in Newton County. I mean, these guys, they went to different high schools, but they played on the same teams, club teams and everything, all the way through the Newton County, youth athletic scene. They went to different high schools. They compete in practice every day.
Yeah.
These are two guys. This is one of those deals. They're making each other better every day. And actually, probably in the sum total of the day, the times that Eric Stokes was having to defend J.J. Holloman, Eric Stokes probably won that battle, but he lost the one that mattered, which was a 39-yard touchdown, I think it was, by J.J. Holloman. And that ended up being the difference, as Eric Stokes pointed out, in him eating beanie weenies for dinner and having lobster and steak, which is what the winning team had tonight. So Eric Stokes didn't come out of this feeling great about himself. And J.J., it was funny because talking about particularly the touchdown play, I asked Eric Stokes about it. He said, I can't really remember what happened on that play. I'll have to go back and look at the film, and JJ was more than happy to fill him in on it. I'll tell you what happened.
Yeah.
I gave him a double move, and I beat him to the inside, and Stokes lost him a little bit. Anyway, that's very, very encouraging for Georgia overall, both J.J. Holloman and Eric Stokes, and that's kind of the takeaway on a spring scrimmage such as this was.
Yeah, I think you're looking at two first-team All-SEC guys. I think J.J. Holloman is going to be the Julio Jones of Georgia this year with that 42-inch vertical. And I did some of those watch videos. Georgia's got an incredible film crew, by the way. The school and the highlights that they get from practices and scrimmages. And if you follow them on Twitter, you've seen them. And a lot of times I'll grab those screen grabs from Twitter, put them in a story, and kind of write a narrative around it saying, here's this guy and here's this guy, just so the fan doesn't have to go to the internet and look up some roster to figure out who's who. But we saw JJ make some unbelievable plays over Stokes when Stokes was in great coverage. And today I was kind of like with you. It looked like Stokes kind of got him back a little bit. Mm-hmm. JJ did miss a target in the end zone that he usually comes up with. But that's where I'm at with J.J. Holloman now. I'm expecting to see these NFL Sports Center highlight plays from him because I think he's that good. I think he's going to be that effective. And I'm really excited about J.J. And as for Jake, I think there was a little frustration. You could kind of feel Jake holding back a little bit. Jake is going to be able to do a lot of checks and audibles in games. It doesn't do him much good against his own defense because they know all the calls. They know all the route trees. And, Jake didn't say that, but you get the feeling that in games against competition that don't really know the Georgia scheme and don't know the checks, that's where Jake really excels. He's so cerebral and making reads and things like that. So I wouldn't read too much into Jake's stats today. I know a lot of people are commenting, and I think very worthy of comments was Stetson Bennett and Dwan Mathis today, Chip. They both actually exceeded my expectations.
Yeah, the commenters are on the same wavelength that I am. I thought quarterback play overall was actually pretty good today, and especially I was especially impressed with Dwan Mathis. And so here's the thing. I mean, I listened. I was trying to listen to some of the SEC Network broadcasts. We're going to try to listen to the radio some, and based on those guys who got access to the coaches before we came in the game, the narrative on Dwan is that he's just, which is understandable, is only got parts and pieces of the playbook so far. Right. But when you're in an environment like this, it may be G-Day, it may be a controlled scrimmage, but it's not controlled what happens with the snap. So you're able to see what somebody does in a performance situation. And Dwan Mathis, really no surprise if you think about it, was impressive in that regard. He was able to escape the pocket. His arm was a lot better than I expected to see. One of the things, and I'm not a technical guy, really. I mean, I don't get into this type of thing. I don't pretend to be Coach Chip or Coach Towers. But they've definitely changed his arm slot. So one of the things I noticed when he was in high school at Belleville, there was a lot of this, a lot of the sidearm kind of stuff. He was really coming over the top and delivering some pretty good velocity on some of those throws, and then hitting the check downs and the tight ends over the middle. That's not a small thing to be able to recognize.
I want to put you on the spot. I want to put Chip on the spot. I'm going to risk a little controversy here.
Wonderful.
Ready? Was Dwan Mathis as impressive in this spring game as Justin Fields was a year ago in that spring game?
Yeah.
Not trying to read into it, not saying who's going to be better, but
yeah,
I wasn't here for that game. I just want to know.
Yeah, no. So Justin Fields was all the buzz last year, but it was kind of the same type of buzz.
Right.
When you look at it in the grand scheme of things, it's in the second half. It's when you got a lot of second team, third teamers out there. It's a little bit different. You're not running a sophisticated package, and you don't have the good on good necessarily all the way across the board. I would say Dwan Mathis was similarly impressive as Justin Fields was last year. Yeah.
And it's a pertinent question because Georgia does need to have a good backup quarterback. Not trying to do any troll job or anything like that, but I think it's important to know how good is Georgia at backup quarterback. I know Greg McElroy in the broadcast today talked about the possibility of Georgia adding another graduate transfer quarterback to the mix. And they still might do that because it's Georgia, and hey, come here and maybe you'll be on a national championship team in 2019. Yeah. But Chip, after today, I don't necessarily feel an urgency for that because as impressive as Dwan was, I thought Stetson Bennett did some really good things. I believe he completed 7 of his first 8 passes. He looked extremely comfortable in the pocket. I saw him move around, put a ball downfield. He didn't look like he was rusty in any perspective. I know he's a little bit shorter, 5'10", 5'11", and so his windows aren't quite the same as a 6'6" Dwan Mathis or a 6'1" or 6'2" Jake Fromm. But I was very impressed with Stetson Bennett, and I think Georgia's quarterback situation, backup quarterback situation, is I would say adequate. I would say they're adequate at backup quarterback, and we've still got the summer ahead, and these young men are both going to go to quarterback coaches and throw a lot with the receivers. So I came away more impressed with the backup quarterbacks than I thought that I would be. I mentioned Jake didn't have the day that he wanted. He told us that. I thought the receivers showed some step up. Let's flip it over a little bit more.
Well, before we get away, I want to add one more thing. The other thing about the whole offense and about everything else is what you didn't see today really is what Georgia's offense is all about. Those big road grading offensive linemen, and Georgia just didn't commit to running the football. I mean, Kirby said that afterward. That's not what this is about. Georgia's going to always remain a run-first team, but this was a day that was dedicated to working on the passing game.
Yep.
And the passing game looks totally different when you're not committed to the running game. And when you're committed to running game with DeAndre Swift and Brian Harrion and that number one line kind of making holes for you where the play action pass works as well as it does. So all that has to be put in perspective too. I mean, this was kind of a sort of just it was like playing on one half of the field for the offense. They weren't really using the whole other half.
Yeah, 115 plays today between the two teams, the red team and the black team. 83 of them were pass plays. 32 were runs. And Kirby mentioned, there's the 2-minute offenses at the end of the half for both teams, so that's 4 minutes versus of 2 minutes off. It's essentially 8 minutes of 2-minute offense, which is a lot of passes. So that's why the numbers are somewhat skewed. But listen, they don't need to prove that they can run the football. They knew coming in, and this offensive line. And you look, Chip. I said this on Feinbaum, and I know I'm taking a lot of heat from people outside of the state of Georgia when I said that Georgia's number 6 and number 7 offensive linemen, current as of today, Cade Mays and Jamari Salyer, I said that those two young men could start for any offensive line in the country, and I'm taking a lot of heat for that. And I, keep bringing it, because let me tell you, those guys are kick-ass players. And I really would like to see a line that, that they couldn't start on, because they're both amazing. I mean, Cade was a freshman All-American last year who can swing between guard and tackle. Salyer can also swing between guard and tackle. He was the number 1 prospect in the 2018 signing class. So I will stand by that statement. And as Jake said, they ran the ball at will today. I thought Swift looked good, but my thought was this wasn't no pun intended, this wasn't a Swift track. I think Swift is better on a dry, fast field.
Yeah,
I think the cutting ability from DeAndre Swift wasn't as evident today as I've seen on dry, fast tracks.
No, it wasn't. But we didn't see a lot of DeAndre overall. Period. And just to touch on your point real quick on Jamari Sawyer, I don't know if he got any guard reps today, but I was very intrigued to see him work so much at right tackle.
Yeah.
That's not at all what you heard about Jamari when he was a 5-star as a guard coming here. Now he's playing at tackle, and Kirby talked about in the post-game remarks that, hey, there's nothing written in stone about this O-line.
He did.
And Isaiah Wilson, who you think is an immovable object over there, but he said that's not over. So,
right.
Jamari, that's I think your statement is pretty solid, really, and it's not to overinflate, Georgia's promise. It's just this happens to be a really stocked position, and you just look at recruiting pedigree, size, and everything else. I guarantee you, if they had trades allowed in the SEC, Kirby's phone would be ringing all the time. Hey, what you want for those two guys? Back up right side.
Let me ask you this: after watching today's game, if you were going to trade one of those linemen, what position would you trade for?
Oh gosh, there's no question. I would maybe if I was working a deal, I'd trade those two guys on the right side of the O-line, trusting that maybe you'll have health for the whole season.
You got other guys coming up, Warren Erickson.
For some D linemen.
I would agree. That's still the area to me.
And some cash for some D linemen.
Or to help pay for the indoor facilities coming up.
Yeah.
I agree with Chip, and I know that Julian Rochester didn't play. He was one of the guys that was injured, and there were some injuries. But to me, the question still is about the defensive line. I didn't see a defensive lineman go out there and just throw somebody out of the way. But again, we are talking, and it sounds like hyperbole. I promise it's not. This is the best offensive line I've ever seen in the 30 years I've covered football. I've been around in the journalism industry. There may be another one I'm forgetting, but could this be the best college football offensive line in the modern era of history, going back to the 85 scholarship limit? I certainly think the potential is there, and all five of these young men, and like I said, and Cade Bays and Salyer, these all look like NFL players to me. I mean, they really do, Chip. And now I want to talk a little bit about linebacker. I didn't see a lot of Tate Crowder out there today, but I wonder how much of that had to do with the fact that Kirby knows what Tate can do.
Yeah.
I feel like Tate Crowder has asserted himself as a leader. I've really enjoyed getting to know Tate in these interviews the last 2 years. He's a very humble and modest young man. You can tell Kirby likes to have fun with him. When he had that interception last year, and somebody said, didn't he used to be a running back? And Kirby said, well, if you saw him run it back, you can see why he's not a running back anymore. But you look at Tate Crowder, and he has the look of an NFL linebacker. I think they really wanted to get Nakobe Dean a lot of work here and a lot of snaps. How important depth is to Kirby. I was impressed with Nakobe Dean. He had 5 tackles. He did some good things. He's got a good leader ahead of him in Tate Crowder that can take him under his wing. Tate's had to learn a lot after switching from running back, and he's going to be in a position to help Nakobe Dean. This linebacking core to me, and today wasn't an opportunity for them to really showcase, but to me, I think the linebacking core is going to be the most improved unit on the team this year, Chip.
Yeah, I feel about the linebacking core kind of like I do the wide receiver core. I think those guys might be a little better than advertised. I think they're pretty solid. I think Kirby feels pretty good about it. I think that's why you didn't see a lot of Tate Crowder today. And we were talking about the defense, and I was double checking the stats here to make sure. I saw Notori Johnson, who flipped from the offensive line. Talk about a guy, he came here highly advertised as an offensive lineman. He actually had a tackle for loss. And I'm seeing here they credited him with a half a tackle for loss, but I don't see all the plays. In fact, you could be argued I miss a lot of the plays out there while we're writing and texting and tweeting and everything during the game. But I happened to see that play, and that he shouldn't be sharing that tackle for loss with anybody. That was a clean tackle for loss for Notori Johnson, and he actually beat his former teammate Justin Schaefer on the play, got inside of him and made a tackle for loss. I think it might have been on a 3rd down. They ended up having to settle for a field goal. So Notori Johnson's another one of those guys that you're looking through to come through. But what was your original point? I think I answered something else.
No, the most improved unit on the team to me is the linebacking.
Oh yeah.
We didn't really get to see a lot of Nolan Smith on the perimeter, but again, remember, we are talking about an offensive line.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable, and that's the other part of putting those young guys, Smith and Dean. Some people asking why were they with the first team, and Kirby kind of addressed that. He wants to get as many guys repetitions and opportunities as possible, and by putting those guys with the first team, he let those young men work against first team offensive linemen. Mm-hmm. So they might be killing it in scrimmage drills against the second team line, but today was a dose of reality. You didn't see Nolan Smith make any plays in the backfield. No. He might be the number one.
I don't remember anything about him at all.
No, I mean, I saw the jersey a couple times, but he was getting swallowed up by the lineman.
I saw Nakobe Dean a few times, and one of the things I noticed is he does a quick cross every time before every play.
Does he really?
Yeah. I mean, at first I was like, "What is he? Is he signaling?" And I said, "Oh, he's doing a cross before every single play." I see several comments here talking about a couple of people were saying they were disappointed with the turnout. Look, Mike he's got his Eddie Bauer jacket on. I've got a pullover on.
And thermals.
I was in last Saturday. I was at Notre Dame in South Bend, and I was making fun of those guys up there. I've gotten to know a few of them. Having been up there a couple of times in the last couple of years, it was really cold up there. And I can't believe. I think it was just as cold here
today. How did that crowd compare to this,
Georgia? There was definitely more here. So a lot of people are a little skeptical of what was the final number they gave.
52,000
attendance. 52,000. I don't know if they count, if this is turnstile count or what it is, or what it's. There's a lot of controversy about spring game attendance. They had 30,070, I think it was, up there. And it looked fair. That looked fairly accurate. They have an 80,000 seat stadium. It was not as big as this crowd. There's no question that it wasn't up there at Notre Dame. And hey, look, that's going to be a great ass in Week 4. Notre Dame coming to Athens right now. If you look at the way too early polls, they're 6, 7, 8, 9 is what I've seen in a lot of those polls. They're probably Georgia and Notre Dame, neither one are probably going to lose before they come here and meet. So that's going to be a top 5 matchup in Sanford Stadium. And look, they're excited up there about coming down here. But the weather here was just really crappy. Kirby had a really funny comment. If you didn't see his post-game remarks, he said when they arrived, when the team actually arrived here on their dog walk and everything, it was raining pretty good. And Kirby was, when the crowd that ended up, he was thanking the crowd for coming. And he said, when they got here, he said, I'm thinking to myself, I probably wouldn't be here today.
He did.
We were thinking the same thing. If this wasn't our job, I mean, I don't think, in fact, my wife and son had the opportunity to come today, and they opted out. They said, I don't think I want to go. So, I mean, that's certainly understandable. But so 52, I mean, whether it's accurate or not, I don't know. It was good. But no matter how you slice it up, that was a good crowd. And really a pretty good day. I mean, I think Georgia got a commitment. There were a lot of recruits here. Kirby took forever to get to us because he was visiting with all the recruits afterward. So, I mean, I think it was a red-letter day for Georgia. There's, nobody – what was it Saban said the other day? Nobody has a bad signing day. Nobody has a bad spring game. The truth is Georgia did not suffer any injuries of any significance whatsoever. Disappointment, by the way, that we didn't get a chance to see D-Rob. Demetrius Robertson not here because he was ill. Nobody knew that for a while. Kirby talked to Chuck Dowdle during the game, and it got out that he had an illness last night. Was really disappointed not to be able to play. That was one of the biggest storylines for both me and you, is getting a chance to see D-Rob, and I don't think it lessens anything about what he's done in the spring or he will do in the fall. But anyway, by and large, a very good day for Georgia football.
Yeah, a good turnout. And, Chip's talking about a potential top 10 matchup in the spring game you went to. I am going to better Chip on this. I'm going to tell you about a top 2 or top 4 matchup. And I was at their spring game, and I'm talking about the Clemson Tigers. And they may not be on the schedule, but that's the team that Georgia's going to run into in the playoffs, in my estimation. And I was there for Clemson as a member of the Football Writers Organization. I don't know how many of y'all know this, but I've done the Freshman All-American team. I've been the chairman of that since 2001. And so a big part of my duties is I've got a panel of writers across the country who nominate players from each conference. And then I do some selections. I'm not the SEC representative because I cover the SEC, so I recuse myself. There was 3 Georgia football players on there, but they were nominated by someone else. I'll just say that. I didn't have to nominate them. I do the independents. independent schools, because we don't really have a beat writer in those schools. And so I was there on behalf of the football writers on a day off Saturday to do the Clemson spring game and as Sean Alexander Freshman of the Year Award, interview Trevor Lawrence. And that was a Chamber of Commerce day, and they probably did have 10,000 people more than Georgia, but it was 75 degrees and sunny, and they were giving out national championship rings.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, this place was every bit as loud as Clemson was 2 weeks ago for a national championship game ring presentation. And we're talking about the worst weather you can get in Georgia, which is mid-40s, rain and wind. I mean, it was absolutely awful, Chip.
Yeah.
When you told me I don't think it's going to be a good crowd, I'm flashing back to when I covered Michigan State, and I'm thinking, 15, 20,000. No, 52,000 on a bad day, a really bad day. So I was extremely impressed. I think Georgia fans know that this is a special team. I think they understand that this could be the start of their national championship season that they've been waiting on. And, while today it was somewhat of a humble beginning for, maybe Jake Fromm, you didn't see everything, but there's a reason for that. Georgia's not going to put their best stuff out there. That was their base offense. And I was encouraged by the young players that made plays, because that's what has to happen for a team to win a championship, is that each week you need people to emerge, Chip, and step up. And there needs to be a different hero every week. And I saw the potential for that with a lot of these young players. I want to go ahead and look for questions now. If you've got questions for Chip and I, now is the time to ask them. We're going to wrap this up pretty quick here. So if you've got any questions, go ahead and ask. I'm looking at the screen right now and seeing Mike Meisel's comments there. That Kirby said they're not showing a lot yet on offense. That's correct. Summer on Clemson should join the SEC. I agree, but I don't think South Carolina will let that happen. All the member schools have to be in agreement. I would agree, though, that Clemson does have a very much an SEC personality. Dabo Swinney's done a great job there. He's got a ton of respect for Georgia. When I asked him about Georgia, that's when he said he'd play him every year if he could. That was out of respect. Georgia, Dabo and Kirby are starting to build a relationship on this Nike tour. They have a lot more in common than they are different. Who commits next? Chuck, I don't know. That would be a Jeff Santel question. Any preferred walk-ons impress you? There was a running back today. Let me look at this stat sheet.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of commentary about that. While you look at that stat sheet, somebody asked about Zeus, and let me just dispense with that real quick. Zeus didn't play today. He wasn't about to play today. His recovery is going extremely well, and he'll be released in preseason camp. But he never was going to play today. His recovery is right on point, and you're just not going to see him play until preseason camp.
No reason to.
No reason to risk it.
KJ McCoy.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard anything about this guy. Be honest with you. I didn't know anything about him. 5 carries for 28 yards today. That's tough sledding against any Georgia defense. So congratulations to KJ. And Kirby made the comment that Georgia recruits preferred walk-ons as hard as any program in the country. And when you look at Georgia high school football, Chip, why wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, this state does an incredible job. And I said this the other day on 92.9 The Game. Georgia administrators, education people, they should pat themselves on the back. Yes, Georgia has a high number of Division I college football signees. A big reason that that's true is because these kids get eligible. I think Georgia does a great job with their education statewide. I look at some of these schools and some of these facilities, and having lived in other states around the South, be it Tennessee or Alabama or South Carolina, North Carolina, certainly traveled through Florida and Mississippi, Louisiana, I think Georgia is at the head of the class in terms of their education system. And so these educators and the folks that pay these property taxes that can be a bit of a pain, look what it's going to. You got some kids that are getting coached up by great coaches. Georgia pays better for high school football coaches than any of the states around here. You've got great facilities. And you got kids, most importantly, that are getting a good enough education that they're scoring well in these standardized tests, and they've got the GPA where Kirby can go in there and pick up a transcript and feel pretty good that a kid's going to qualify. So hats off to the Georgia educators in the state and the state school system, because that's a big reason why Georgia's able to produce so many FBS candidates. Chip?
Lillian Hill, Trey Hill's mom is on here.
Cool.
Say hello to her, and somebody, so maybe they've read both things, said stock up or stock down on Matt Landers. And so it's funny because Mike in his stock up or stock down put stock down for Landers, and then I opened the show with saying I thought he was one of the most encouraging things. But we're coming at the same thing from a different way. Matt Landers had a lot of targets today, which tells me that the quarterbacks and the coaches really wanted to see what Matt Landers could do. He did not win a couple of 50-50 balls that he needs to make those catches. But the bottom line is they are targeting Matt Landers, and you can kind of see that's one of the guys that's on the periphery of that regular rotation that they're trying to work in there.
I saw somebody made a case for Matt Landers as an MVP. That's cool. But this is why I went with Brian Herring. If you put Brian Herring on the other offense, I think they win the football game.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because Brian, like I said, now listen, DeAndre Swift is a Heisman Trophy candidate. He is unbelievable. Someday when I start bragging about all the great running backs that I've covered, DeAndre Swift is going to be in that conversation. But today, in that environment, on that slick turf, Brian Herring was the best running back today. I thought he was the most physical. I thought he ran the most determined. Swift had a drop. It wasn't DeAndre's best day. I'm giving Brian Herring the MVP today.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I don't have any problem with it whatsoever.
Well, folks, we're going to wrap it up, and I appreciate you watching, and Trey Hill's mom, thanks for watching too. Always appreciate seeing the moms out there, and Trey, when the Kentucky game, Chip, when they threw him out there? I mean, they threw him. That was at that time. That was one of the top defenses in the country, and the most senior-laden defense in the country.
That's right.
And Georgia didn't miss a beat with Trey Hill in there. And it's interesting. You talk to all these other guys, and they're celebrated. Okay, we all know that Andrew Thomas is an Outland Trophy Award candidate and probably a first-round draft pick. We all know about Solomon Kinley, that big, jovial 340-pounder. We all want to give him a hug after interviews because he's so much fun to talk to, and he's just such a pleasurable guy. We all know about Cade Mays and how nasty and ornery he is in the trenches. We all know about Isaiah Wilson, the big 6'7" house that's 300, and we certainly know about Big Ben and his 335 pounds and his 19 mile an hour. And then there's just Trey Hill. And you go, well, this guy's a sophomore. He's not celebrated for anything. I guess they say he's got big, chunky legs. The
tree trunk
legs. But you know what? You talk to all these other linemen about Trey Hill, and they all say, oh, yeah, we're not worried about it. And, Chip, they just lost a captain in Lamont Galliard, and they're not worried about Trey Hill taking over the job. When your peers say that about you, that means more than anything you're going to read or hear anywhere else.
If there's any highlight you should go look at for Trey Hill, go back and Google up the YouTube of DeAndre Swift's touchdown run against Kentucky, where he cuts it and goes right up the gut. And the reason he cut and went right up the gut is because Trey Hill blocked two guys on that play. He blocks the man up on him and knocks him to the inside, and then goes to the second level and clears that guy out. And that's how DeAndre Swift ended up going all the way for that unbelievable touchdown.
Here's the good news. All these other guys can go pro after this year. Trey can't. No. So you've got Trey for at least 2 more years. Yeah. These other guys, Chip, I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
I'm really not so sure because these other linemen, Andrew Thomas is a junior. Look, he's gone. Okay,
yeah,
don't even think about it. Solomon Kinley, 50-50. I think he could be gone.
Right. That's what he plays this year.
Right guard, Big Ben, I think another 50-50 guy, especially since he's had an injury, a broken fibula. He's going to be sensitive to that if he can go pro. And Isaiah as well. Isaiah Wilson will be sensitive to that as well as he got through that.
Now that you mention it, it could be a mass turnover on the offensive line. I'm sure that's how Sam Pittman has managed to continue to recruit like he has, because that's four NFL early underclassmen candidates.
A year from now,
rattled off right there.
A year from now, we may be sitting here talking about the veteran Trey Hill and what he said about the young offensive linemen around him. That could be the story. But today, I think the story was a couple things. If I wrap it up, I'll give you my 3 points, Chip, and then you give me your 3 to wrap it up. One, I'm going to say 50,000 people. Despite this weather, I think Georgia fans give yourselves a hand. This was an incredible turnout on a 46-degree day with rain and wind. I certainly would have never anticipated more than 30,000, and there was 52,000 here too. I think the backup quarterbacks are a lot better than we certainly thought, maybe even better than Kirby thought. I think you made a great point, Chip. You don't really know what they're going to do in a performance environment, and I thought Stetson Bennett and Dwan Mathis both really looked outstanding. And 3 for me, and I brought it up a couple times, I hate to beat a dead horse, But that Brian Harrion stiff arm on J.R. Reed in the open field showed me a dimension that, Brian Harrion's not just a blue-collar workhorse. This guy's got some star potential this year. I think he could be more effective even than Elijah Holyfield was last year.
Yes, my 3 points would be, one, it was a terrific day, and I would say in particular for the defense, because even though technically the defensive team, the black team, lost, I thought, in fact, if you read me, if you read me regularly, you know that I wrote that expect offensive fireworks. In the G-Day game.
Wrong.
Because I did, because I thought they're going to be, because they'd be throwing the ball around a lot, and I thought the defense would be overmatched. So I thought the defense overall played better than I expected them to. I'm going to stick with Matt Landers. I think he's an intriguing figure, and I'm going to really follow him closely going forward. Maybe we can drum up some more copy of him on going over the summer. And then finally, Jake Camarda.
Yeah, kicked the field, 49-yard?
49-yard field goal with an easy 10 yards to spare. So it's going to be interesting to see going forward. This will be Rodrigo's last year no matter what. Maybe Jake Camarda, he's obviously Georgia's punter. Maybe he makes a run at being the place kicker too. I know Georgia's got some signees on that end or some commitments, but that's going to be interesting to watch going forward.
Yeah, a lot of interesting things are going to be on Dog Nation here in the next few days. We're going to be recapping this game, and I've got a lot of interviews to get to.
More tomorrow, more Monday.
And I can't wait to write it. I'm so excited. It's going to be sad, because we're going to go into this abyss where there's no live football again until we go to SEC Media Days. But we're going to have some really cool stuff. We're doing next generation stuff. We're going around and talking to recruits. Next week, second half of next week, Thursday is the draft. And we're going to see some Georgia Bulldogs drafted, and maybe 8 or 9 guys. I know they were there at the Combine. So we'll be turning our attention to that. Don't forget that baseball team, Chip. They just swept Missouri. Another shutout today.
Yeah,
they did. It's softball team, I believe, split with Tennessee. But this baseball team, top 5, I think we're looking at potentially a College World Series team. So if you're a Georgia fan,
so you're going to Omaha, or I'm going to Omaha?
I think you're going to be gone half the time.
11 days.
We might be going to the SEC tournament in Birmingham if the Dogs make it to the championship. So we're there. We're on top of baseball. I was there for that Clemson game, that 20-inning game. So if you're a Georgia Bulldogs fan, I would encourage you to check out your baseball and your softball teams because I've seen them both firsthand. And you got the best hitter in the game of softball, and Alyssa DiCarlo on that softball team, and this Georgia baseball team, they've got a chemistry in their winning chip. You've seen a little bit of them, and in the coverage. So the next few days, lots of football for you, and then we're going to turn our attention to the NFL draft the end of next week. And then May comes, Chip. We're going to be out talking to different prospects and recruits and
next generation, baby,
and covering some baseball. So I hope you all tune in. Follow Chip on Twitter. Chip, what's your
at Towers DN or something?
At Towers DN.
Yeah,
okay.
No, at Chip Towers DN.
Okay, at Chip Towers DN. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike Griffith 32. Everybody have a tremendous Saturday night. We're shutting it down from the Georgia press box. Appreciate Georgia letting us hang out here and do our thing.